Hello and welcome to another edition of GuideVision Insider, the podcast that takes you inside of GuideVision and gives you some insight into the world of ServiceNow. And for this episode, we've got a special guest all the way from Sweden, Niklas Nilsson, delivery leader for GuideVision in Sweden. Where exactly are you based?
GuideVision Sweden is based in a small town in south of Sweden called Växjö. That's where we started.
It's pronounced how?
Växjö.
Växjö, but it's Vaxjo, right?
Correct.
Okay, Växjö. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know. And you're here just in Prague for a visit, so we're taping this episode here in Prague. But the team, how big is the team in Växjö?
The team in Växjö is 4 people. Mm-hmm. The team in Sweden have already grown to 6 people. So, we're growing.
All right. And what is a delivery leader? What is that? What do you do in that role?
Well, a little bit of everything, really.
Yeah.
It means that I'm the person in charge of the actual delivery projects. So for a client, I am the head guy for the client. I'm in charge and overseeing the entire delivery for that client.
Mm-hmm. And one of the interesting things that your background is also kind of an interesting story. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born? Where you grew up? And
yeah, as you so said, my name is Niklas Nilsson. Mm-hmm. I was born and raised in Växjö. Never left that town.
Okay.
I like it. I like the smaller towns. Växjö has like 90,000 people. Mm-hmm. Lots of nature around, and I prefer that in the regular life than to the big cities. Mm-hmm. The big cities are too busy for me. I like the small town. I like a short commute. I don't like to sit in traffic.
Yeah.
I like the ease of access to everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 40 years old. Recently moved into a big house with my girlfriend.
All right.
So now I'm learning how to garden. That's new for me.
Okay. What did you study in university?
I actually did not go to the university.
Okay.
I'm self-taught in most of everything. I started working in IT 23 years ago. Back then, there really wasn't that much you could study in the university for IT. So if you had that interest, you just had to learn for yourself. Mm-hmm.
And how did you come to ServiceNow?
I first came into contact with the platform around 2014, 2015. Mm-hmm. I was working for a web development company, overseeing their entire support, and we needed a new system to manage all the influx of tickets because that company was growing so rapidly, and we had a hard time keeping up with the actual amount of incoming support, and we needed to look into how do we modernize, how do we automate those processes. So that's when I first came into contact with ServiceNow.
All right, and you've been working with it ever since?
Practically, yes.
Yeah.
In a few different roles, but since then, ServiceNow has always been there.
And it's evolved, I'm pretty sure, massively since when you started.
Yeah, the last 7 years of ServiceNow has been, I mean, if you don't keep up, you're going to fall way behind.
Yeah.
They are going so fast, so you there's always something you can read up on.
Definitely. Now, your career path took you from working in a web development company to working with a larger corporation. And you headed up the ServiceNow for that corporation?
Correct.
Yeah.
I was the platform owner for a pretty large ServiceNow instance for a big company in Sweden and Nordics that are still branching out.
Yeah.
And we started our ServiceNow journey end of 2017. Mm-hmm. And that journey is still going on in that company.
So you led the implementation?
Not the implementation.
Okay.
I was there 2 months after the go live. But by then, no one was using it. It was there, it was implemented, but no one was using it. No one internally, no one externally.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you were one of the people responsible for actually getting it
Correct.
getting it used.
Correct.
Uh-huh.
And that has always been a challenge for me in every company I've ever seen that are using ServiceNow. They all implement it. Now comes the actual adoption of it. That's always the bigger journey, I think,
Yeah.
to get everyone to actively start using ServiceNow the way it's meant to be used.
You know, the GuideVision has actually talked about end user engagement quite a bit. I mean, we've even given webinars on, you know, how to engage end users and things like that. Do you have any tips, any recommendations, big picture type things that can help?
Yeah, I would say involve the end users earlier than you think, because they are the ones that are going to use it every single day. They are the ones that will be closest to the platform, and they are the ones closest to the processes that you're implementing in ServiceNow. If you leave out the end users during the entire implementation phase, you're going to leave them behind. They're going to have a lot more catching up to do if you just invite them when it's all said and done. So bring the end users in early.
So with this user engagement, you've obviously had some success in getting people to use the system. In your previous position, how big was the ServiceNow implementation that you had?
Do you mean in terms of
Like
daily users?
Yeah,
or
end users.
End users were 300 to 400 on a daily basis,
Okay.
doing everything from like 400 to 500 different tasks, everything from support to warehouse to financials.
Okay.
Everything.
And so when you started out with essentially from 0 users, how did you actually get people involved? What were some of the things that you did?
The first thing I did was go person to person. Sit down with the person, see how they work currently. Okay. Then I go back home, figure out, okay, this is how they should do it in the new ServiceNow that is implemented. Go back the next day, sit with them again, and explain. This is how you should do it. This is how we built it. This was the thought behind it, etc. So it was in the beginning, it was a very slow process because I had to do person by person. But after a bit, I had ambassadors for ServiceNow. Internal ambassadors that were explaining to their colleagues, oh, you should do this in ServiceNow. Oh, but here, use it like this in ServiceNow. So in the end, I had users going to other users and teaching them how to use it, explaining to them the benefits of it. So slow start, but as the daily usage grew, I could just sit back and watch it grow organically within the company.
But I mean, there's also a real personal aspect, at least in that beginning phase, that you had to really take the time to observe, to listen to the end users, and figure out what their needs were.
Correctly, and I think that's why you should always try to involve the end users at the beginning of the process, and not as I had to do when it was already implemented.
Right.
If they would have been there from the start, they would have been ambassadors from the get-go, instead of me trying to get them to be ambassadors. So yeah, a lot of legwork in the beginning, but if you want a successful implementation, you need the users, and I needed the users, so I did what I had to do.
And that doing what you had to do involved really spending a fair amount of time sitting, like literally sitting with them, observing and listening.
I had to sit. I had to like go do their job. Work with them for a day. Work with them for a week. Figure out what their challenges are and how ServiceNow was built to help them in those challenges. And then just explain to them, go over with them, help them understand what we built, why we built it, and how they should use it.
And is this approach something that you've taken to other clients now? This
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, every time now I try to get an ambassador. I need an internal ambassador at the company to spread the word internally, because not every implementation project even if it's a brand new implementation project or they just implement application number 19 within the company, you are going to touch users that never seen ServiceNow before. So you need an internal ambassador for those people, and finding that ambassador is great, because then you know that this implementation will be successful.
So it's really a social solution to a technical problem.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, people in general they're not afraid of change, but what they have works. They like it. They've done it for many years. And changing their daily routine, their daily work is not always easy. So you need to not just explain the technical benefits to them. You need to explain and be with them on their own journey in actively choosing to want to be a part of the journey.
When you came aboard with ServiceNow, you probably have seen some of the benefits that it brings. What did it bring to the company that you were working at before?
I would say automation and insight. Automation part is pretty straightforward. You can take a business process you have and you automate it, removing manual steps, etc. But the insight factor is one of the key factors. It gives you so much more insight and leverage over your own data. What can you do with it? And that's one of the key benefits, I say.
Yeah. What would be an example of those kinds of insights? Like seeing how many people are using Windows or things like that? I mean, what would be an example?
For instance, you can see how many people are using Windows, how many tickets are solved under 5 minutes, how many tickets are routed more than twice before they are solved.
Okay.
Can we fix that? Why do they need to be routed twice?
Yeah.
Can't we just route them correctly from the start? So in many older legacy systems, you have the top layer of insights and data, but not the second layer where you actually can get down to the nitty-gritty on why are the things happening. If you can't answer the why, then you can't fix it. So that level of insight, you can drill down as far as you want to go in ServiceNow. And that level of insight, if someone's actively looking at that, will get you a lot of benefits.
And is that expressed in dashboards or in other reports, or how would you find that?
I know how I would find it.
Yeah.
I would simply go dig.
Okay.
But the more structured way is, of course, figuring out what you want to see and building a proper dashboard for it. That's the proper way to do it. But as a techie as I am, I like to dig in the data. I like to be in the data and figure it out for myself.
Sounds good. Now, what were some of the benefits? I mean, you have these insights, right? But did they result in, for example, savings for the company or greater efficiency?
I would say they resulted in both savings and more cost, because of course you can find things you can save on, but also things you can improve. And it's not always that improvement comes with a cost benefit, but it could come with a lot of other benefits. And figuring out the balance between, okay, this is a good investment to make, it's going to cost more money in the long run, but it will give us X, Y in the end. Versus, okay, here we can just save X amount of euros, X amount of dollars, but it's, again, a balance you need to find.
Okay. And it's this is actually something that I was going to ask about when working with management, right? Because management needs to buy into all of this.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? How do you get buy-in from management?
I would say it depends on where the management are. Are they ready for a full digital transformation? Are they not ready? Do you first need to sell the digital transformation, or has that already been implemented, so to say? And then it's just a matter of explaining the benefits, going over the benefits, what it will do for the company, what it's going to cost the company, how will it position the company? Because it's not just internal business processes that you can support with ServiceNow. You can also support your active customer journey in ServiceNow. Will ServiceNow get us more customers in the end? Yes or no? So figuring out what it is the company wants to do with ServiceNow and what they want to achieve with ServiceNow. What problem are ServiceNow actively solving for them? Okay.
Now, this actually brings me to the next part of your journey, because you've been working for a ServiceNow customer, and now you're working for a ServiceNow solution provider. How is that? How are the two things different? I mean, obviously, aside from the obvious things, like one is providing a solution, and
yeah, I would say on a general day-to-day basis, it's not a lot of differences. At the previous company, I was, as I said, in charge of the ServiceNow platform, so I worked with the ServiceNow platform every single day. Here, I'm doing the same, but instead for different customers. The changes are more in that I wanted to focus more on explicitly ServiceNow. At the previous job, I was the platform owner of ServiceNow, but also for a few other platforms. And I wanted to dedicate my time to ServiceNow because ServiceNow it's still growing at a tremendous pace. And I want to be on the journey for ServiceNow. So for me, it was a obvious choice that if I want to get more into ServiceNow, I need to actively start working for a supplier of ServiceNow.
And in your current role as delivery leader, you do a fair amount of hand-holding through the process, right?
Correct.
When you're working with your customers, I mean, is there a difference in cultures in the companies that you're working with where they have a different attitude toward external solution providers? Or, sometimes you have these companies who are like, oh God, another vendor,
Yeah, at my previous job, I was one of those guys. Oh, another vendor. I don't need another vendor.
Yeah.
And I think it's a balance you need to strike because if you're using ServiceNow internally at your company, you can't have experts in every single area. It's impossible. I mean, even we as a ServiceNow provider, we have hundreds of consultants, hundreds of people, plenty of architects, certified architects, master architects. And we need to constantly educate ourselves to actually know what's coming. What's the best way? What's the best implementation of this application? What's the best for this? And to be a user of ServiceNow, you cannot have that knowledge of every single part of the platform. So you practically need a vendor for ServiceNow. Because if you want to get full usage out of ServiceNow, you need to use the best practices. And you cannot have all of those resources internally. You need to strike a balance. And you definitely need an in-house ServiceNow team that can manage the platform, own the platform. But then you need a supplier for it to actually do all the hard work.
When I was talking a couple of episodes ago with the team at KBC, they have an interesting arrangement with GuideVision where the GuideVision team is really located physically side by side out of their office, and the leader said, I don't see any difference between the GuideVision team and the KBC team. We're all one team. That seems to be a real best practice.
Yes, I would definitely say so. It doesn't matter if it's GuideVision or ServiceNow or a different cloud provider or a different service provider. If you have a big platform that requires outside help, you need to let them be part of the team. If they're not part of the team, they will not understand the journey you're going on. The consultants need to work very, very closely with the company and the in-house team. If you keep them completely separate as two different teams, they will work as two different teams. And I think we all know how that will end up.
Yeah.
So you need to keep them close. You need to be part of their team and they need to be part of your team. And that's one of the things that I really liked with GuideVision when I was a customer for GuideVision.
Yeah.
That there was no hurdle for that. I could quickly implement that this is one team.
Yeah.
The internal team and the external team is one ServiceNow team. There was not even a question about it. So that's one of the things I really liked about GuideVision before I joined, and I think that's what made the cooperation so amazing during all the years.
That's great. Now, with this actually leads me to the next question then, which is about just the climate, the business climate in the Nordic region. Now, you've got an interesting position in that you're able to see into a lot of different companies. And the first general question is, how are Nordic companies doing with their digital transformation?
Yeah.
Are they doing okay?
In general, every company in the Nordics knows that they need to do a digital transformation, and most bigger companies have a digital transformation plan. But I wouldn't say they're doing good.
Okay.
But they're at least on the right track, and they know what they want to do. But getting all the way, that seems to be the difficult part. And doing it correctly, because digital transformation is just a word. It's just a phrase that we can say, oh, we're doing digital transformation. Yes, but what are you doing?
Right.
You need to figure out, how do you transform your business? There's no playbook for exactly your type of business. You need to figure out, how do I do it for my business? And that's where the struggles are a bit. How do I do it for my business?
In the last episode of the podcast, I was talking with Honza Prokaska, who's he's ServiceNow CMA, and he's principal architect here, and he was talking about working with one of the clients in the Nordics about CSDM, the Common Service Data Model, and that this client said, well, we don't really understand why you're pushing so hard to implement the CSDM, but we trust you and we trust that this is a best practice, so we're going to go ahead with it. And is that something that you see a lot in these companies? Is there this attitude among leadership to, that they may not exactly know what's going on, but they're willing to take advice from the external solution providers?
Yeah, and I think that reverts back to what we discussed a few minutes back when I said that you can't have all the knowledge in-house. You need experts to tell you how to do it, when to do it, and what to do. And I think that's a general, at least in the Nordics, that we like to listen to the actual experts, because we know that we aren't the experts, and we usually aren't afraid to say that, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know this.
Yeah.
And I think that's a culture in the Nordics, that we are not afraid to say that we don't know. That's something we always do, because you can't know everything. But if there comes a person, a provider, that says, this is how you should do it, we have done it before, it has had great success, this is the way you should do it, then Nordic people generally tend to listen to that and understand that, okay, I don't have full knowledge or full insight, but here's this guy that actually has full knowledge and full insight, and he knows what we're doing. He knows this company. We should listen to him.
So that makes your job as a solution provider that much easier, right?
Yeah, but it also makes it more difficult if you are maybe not spot on. If you're not spot on, you will have a very hard time actually getting somewhere with the client.
So you have to really pay attention to being spot on.
Exactly. You really have to know the client, know what they are doing, know their business model, understand where they want to go. Then you can come with a proposal. If you just have the standard playbook, oh, they want to do a digital transformation, this is what they need.
Right.
Then you're going to run into issues. You need to learn the company first, learn what they are trying to do.
This is one of the things that I've always been really fascinated by with GuideVision, that there is this combination not only of the technical know-how, but also of a deep understanding of business and business processes, and really understanding the business side of ServiceNow and what ServiceNow can do for a process and for a business.
Yeah.
And is this something that you've seen as well, that in companies, working with companies in the Nordics, are there Is there a greater emphasis on the business side of it, or is it on the technical side?
Business side, definitely.
Yeah.
The technical side here at GuideVision is astonishing. It's nothing like I've seen before. I've met quite a lot of smart people, but here at GuideVision, I would say that everyone is a smart guy. And in a tech sense, I don't think there's anyone that can beat GuideVision. But also understanding the business processes. That's where we're also excelling. Just having smart guys doing smart tech stuff will not get you all the way.
Right.
You need them to also understand. You need them to listen. You need them to come out of their shell and understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, not just implementing the actual best practice tech.
Right. Let's turn now. So we've talked a little bit about the past and the present. Where do you see the business going in the Nordic region? How do you see, for example, the Swedish office expanding or growing?
Yeah, the Swedish branch will continue to expand heavily. We are actively recruiting anything we can.
Okay.
But
so come and sign up. We've got lots of jobs open.
Exactly. Come. No, but actually finding the correct resources, that's the most difficult part.
Yeah.
ServiceNow is still a pretty close-knit community. You usually don't find a well-trained ServiceNow person that is out of a job. You have to find him somewhere else. So expansion in Sweden is still going, and the market in the Nordics in general is extremely hot. If companies aren't using ServiceNow, they are probably looking into start using ServiceNow. So I see the ServiceNow market in general in the Nordics is just growing at a massive pace. And the problem for us as a vendor is finding the right resources to support ServiceNow and our clients in their growth.
Interesting. That's an interesting problem to have, though. I mean, it's a nice problem to have in many ways because it offers the opportunity for growth as opposed to having to go in the opposite direction, right?
Exactly. I mean, even if we just look at the world markets right now, everyone is saying doomsday things. So far, we have seen nothing of that. We get weekly proposals and questions.
Wow.
And people and companies in particular are actively looking to expand their ServiceNow journeys because they usually just implement a small part of ServiceNow, see what it can do for their business, and then they start looking, but ServiceNow has this. Oh, ServiceNow has an HR module. Oh, ServiceNow has the CSM portal. Ooh. And they start looking into how else can we implement it into our company?
Yeah.
What more business processes can we automate? So just because a company has ServiceNow implemented, they are probably not done on their ServiceNow journey.
Again, a very nice prospect for the future.
Yeah.
So today's guest, Niklas Nilsson, delivery leader for GuideVision in Sweden, in Växjö. I will get it right at some point. Växjö. Thank you for joining us here for the podcast today. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
Great. Well, you've been watching and listening to the GuideVision Insider podcast. My name is Douglas Arianes. We do these podcasts quite frequently. You can catch us on all of the major podcasting platforms and on YouTube and on the GuideVision website. So thanks again, and we'll be talking to you soon. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.